Hi, HR Nation, it's Chris Rainey. Welcome to HR Leaders, the show where we interview today's most successful and innovative HR practitioners 5 days a week. Today, we have a special guest. We're joined by Estelle Roux-Stevens, people and development expert and owner of Stellar People. Estelle, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hi, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I'm really good. Thank you. It's the start of a new year. I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, I think we're like, I'm excited and terrified at the same time. So it's like excitement mixed with, oh my God, what's going to happen? How's this year going to unfold? So I can't wait. The life of running your own company, right? You never know what's going to happen next.
It never stops. You never know what's around the corner, right?
Yeah. Well, I suppose it's quite fitting given the topic we're going to discuss today, right? So couldn't it be any better? Before we jump in, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself personally and your journey to where we are today.
Okay. So HR is, as you know, it's my thing. I'm a bit of an HR geek, to be honest, and it's I feel quite passionate about, having people in the right jobs, doing something that they really feel completely connected with and passionate about and very, connected to. So my journey started a long time ago. I moved from South Africa to England about 20 years ago. I was working for a big corporate at the time. Before we know it, things wrapped up there because of some financial crisis, and I moved straight into startup land, and I think that's where everything kind of started for me personally, because the buzz of working for a company who's going through that growth stage was something that I felt completely connected to. I'm a bit of a builder myself and an architect, so for me, being part of something at the very early stages was super exciting. So life moved on. I had my own consultancy in England. One of my clients became my permanent employer at one point.
Clearly did a good job there.
It was good fun. Yeah, it was fantastic, and it was such an amazing journey and a roller coaster. But spending time with them, working with them for 6 years, I think the buzz of the whole startup scale up, kind of moved on a little bit for me, and it turned into a bit of a corporate beast, which is not really my my passion. So left there at the end of 2017, and last year started the journey as a self-employed consultant again.
Back at it again.
Back at it again, but this time in sunny Amsterdam, because I moved to the Netherlands.
You can't say sunny Amsterdam. It's not really that sunny. It's like we're saying sunny England.
Come on, it's
sometimes sunny Amsterdam.
Sometimes sunny. So. Yeah, it's a very romantic and beautiful city, so I guess
is.
that's where the sunny comes from. So I moved here 4 years ago. So now I'm officially what they call here in the Netherlands a ZZP'er, which is self-employed without employees or something like that. Anyway, so but yeah, I would do work with startups in the kind of scale up part of their phase of their business.
Amazing. So just going back to what you mentioned, because many of the leaders that listen to this show and the HR directors and the CHROs that I work with, they're all thinking at some point, and many of them are in that phase right now of starting their own company, leaving and taking all of that knowledge and experience and starting their own consultancy. Just to help them and to give your insight, what are the pros and cons of working in a company as a practitioner versus, being your own boss and as a consultant and taking that experience and helping other companies? What's the pros and cons of both? Just because you've done both multiple times, which is great. So I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Okay, so working as a practitioner is the variety. No day is ever the same. I have different clients, have different cultures, different businesses. So it's no day is absolutely ever the same. And even though I'd like to plan things in advance, I deal with people. So something comes up and it either needs urgent attention or jumping in or planning or kind of rescheduling something. So no day is ever the same. And I really like that, the flexibility and the variety. And then I guess some of the more challenging or the lowlights is, just the lack of a team around me, sometimes because, working again with the variety and with the different clients, it's kind of jumping in and doing something and then moving back out again. It's like I come home, or to my own office, and it's just like, okay, right, yay, I had a win today. Who do I tell?
Yeah.
Nobody.
Mm.
And
Makes
sometimes
sense.
that could be a little bit frustrating. But then there's also the other things, like having to do absolutely everything, marketing and planning and finance and social media, and it just,
People
yeah.
forget about that, right? And we spoke about that before the
Yeah.
show. And that's something I realized is that, my background was sales. So I was very competent and confident in that. But then when I started my own company,
Mm.
all of a sudden, you're responsible for finance and marketing. And as you said, everything,
Yeah,
chasing invoices and,
it's crazy.
everything you
Yeah.
could think about, right? But then
Yeah.
the pros are that you have flexibility. You can
Yeah.
spend more time with family. You can put in as much work as you want and
Yeah.
take as much time off as you want
Exactly.
as well. So, but then again, you're right. When you're working in a business, and this is something I really miss. I miss now. I've got a bigger team, so it's a lot better. But when I first left, I did miss working with having my
Mm.
big team around me, and that almost like my work family that I
Yeah,
had to celebrate wins with,
exactly.
and go through that journey and see. One of the
Mm.
things I used to love about being a leader is to see people in my team progress,
Yeah.
and I love that.
Oh
Or
yeah.
especially when you're in the sales environment as well, like it's very lonely world if you're just selling on your own, trying to build your business and it's just you, because when you have
Exactly.
those bad days, there's no one to lean on.
No.
Whereas in a sales office with 30 other salespeople, you have the energy, the desire, and to push through together as
Yeah.
well. So
Yeah.
I just want I've raised that point because I know there are many HR leaders listening to the show that
Yeah.
are thinking about starting their own consultancies, and it's not as easy as people make it seem.
It's not, and then there's this whole social media world, which is,
Yeah,
I mean, it's a minefield, right? So now I'm also learning to use Instagram properly, and blogging and vlogging and
yeah, exactly.
podcasts, and like, it's mad.
So my advice for everyone is to start doing it in your own company now.
Yeah.
So like if you're a HR leader who's not, using social media to build your personal brand and also your business brand to attract talent, it's the same set of skills that you will need if
Yeah.
you ever decide to leave the company and
Yeah.
start your own company as well. I wish I knew a lot of what I do now, as well. So let's
Yeah.
jump into the conversation. Obviously, your expertise is that for the part or for many years now, you've been working within startups. So you've seen the good, the bad, the ugly, the pain, the process of seeing founders go through those growth pains in the
Yeah.
organization. I suppose let's kick off the question to what are the sort of keys or things to look for when you're hiring your first employees?
Planning is so important, and well, I want to talk about planning for sure, but one thing that I have seen now many times, still every single day, is that sometimes a CEO or a founder, of course, they're the ones that feel so passionate about their business. This is their company, their dream, their vision, and everyone should want to work for them. Everyone wants to be part of their business, as much as they do. And that's great in theory, but not everyone feels that way, and it's a very, very aggressive market that we're in right now, and there are more jobs than there are candidates, which is crazy. To really thinking about what you're offering as a business, as an employer, as a co-founder or founder of a business. What are you telling the world about your company is super, super important, and being realistic about your candidates and the kind of people that you want to and will attract by the message that you put out there. It has quite a knock-on effect in terms of the interview process, because then there's a bit of a bias or that comes with that, when reading someone's CV or their covering letter, because it's like, I don't see the passion, I can't feel the passion in their covering letter. It's like, well, really?
Yeah, exactly. So how do you overcome that then? Is it sort of about just working with the co-founders to manage their
Yeah.
expectations, or?
Yes. So I work quite closely with co-founders in terms of their expectation, in terms of expectation setting, and this is kind of leading into the planning phase and really thinking about what it is that you need and what it is that you want from a business. What do you want from a candidate, and what do you need as a business? Thinking about the types of roles that you realistically want to hire, and when you're a smaller business looking to grow, then it does sometimes mean that you hire somebody into a role that they might not be doing in a few months' time, because not only has the business moved forward, but you might have been in a situation where you had to potentially pivot or make
multiple times. And we have
exactly.
even in a year, we might have pivoted
Yeah,
3 or 4 times.
so, and then taking into account that you've hired somebody into a role that might now no longer exist or has changed completely. So, hiring for the planning and really being realistic about what type of candidates you attract and how you position yourself in the market is.
What does that planning stage look like? How do you map that out from an actionable point of view? What does that look like?
It's a bit, kind of whiteboard, going back to square one in terms of looking at your business, looking at so for instance, you want to hire somebody within finance, really planning out the types of duties that they'll be getting involved in, and how they'll integrate with the business, what they'll be taking away from somebody who might already been there, what they'll be taking away from you as a co-founder, what realistically you want to be doing, really thinking about the bones of what that position looked like. But then mapping on top of that some of the attitudes and the characteristics that you would expect to see from someone that would fit into the company culture. And even if when it's a really small team, that's so important to take that into account. You want to be building a team that suits your company culture and your DNA and your business. So a lot of scribbling on the whiteboard and moving things around, really talking about the
hard skills and the soft skills.
Yeah, exactly.
So
really
it's got to be a
being honest
combination of both. It's got to be a combination of both. I think I made this, I'll be honest, a mistake when we first started hiring people here, is that I didn't accurately map out everyone's roles. And after a few weeks, even Ivan, who's sitting next to me, you can hear me right now, he was like, what is my role? Like, what exactly is, I want to, detail, because for me, it was like a bit of everything, right? Because we just started the company. So we need a little bit on sales, a little bit on marketing, a little bit on, digital design. So it was like, there wasn't enough of one particular thing to justify a full-time role, a full-time marketeer or a full-time salesperson. It was a bit of everything. And I think if I spent more time mapping out those roles and exactly who that, even like, this is the role, this is the soft skills, hard skills, and also the reporting line, even as a small company, of making sure it's very clear that who that person reports to.
Yeah, because people also want to know where they fit in, right? And they want to know who they report to. They want to know what's expected of them. They also want to know what the road looks like for them. And it's not to say that you have to map out every single step of the way, but because you join a startup for a number of different reasons, and we all have different reasons why we want to work with a company at that stage, right? But people still want to know where it is they're going. And if it's a full-time job, be realistic, right? You might think that you need someone full-time to focus on your social media, because that is just so important, but really thinking about what that would look like on a day-to-day basis and being realistic on what you're expecting from a particular role, because you need to build a job description at the end of the day, right? And you need to be able to market
that was difficult on its own, because it was like, I need someone who could do a bit of everything in the beginning, because at that point you can't afford to hire especially for us, it was a bootstrapped company. I didn't have money to hire a full-time marketer, full-time finance, full-time operations. I needed someone to do a bit of everything until I could generate enough revenue and enough clients to then hire those roles. You also speak about the tools. Could you elaborate on that? That you need to have in place and be prepared for when these people join.
When I talk about tools, like I said, I'm a little bit of a geek, right? So for me, tools just kind of like, it just happens, right? I need tools for many different things. But in terms of for candidates, having a nice ATS, a good ATS to keep track of, all the correspondence you have, all the files, the CVs, for instance, they send presentation for some reason as part of their interview process, or portfolios or whatever, some central place for you to keep that so it's nice and tidy. No one wants an inbox that's overflowing. You turn up in the morning or wherever, and you have an inbox full of candidate correspondence.
Have you seen my inbox? I think you're describing my inbox right now.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And so many times I sit down with a CEO or founder, and it's like, so tell me about this journey, and they're like, well, all the CVs come into my inbox or into my assistant or whoever, virtual PA, whatever, and then what? But they lose track. You lose candidates. You lose so much valuable information if it's not somewhere tidy where you can schedule interviews and keep track of interview notes, interview, and keeping things consistent, for instance, because an ATS would help you create interview kits, which includes interview notes and questions, and make it all nice. And
we would never do that with our clients, right? So we'd never take that approach. So obviously, when of course, I have my own CRM where it's the same approach to make sure I can keep track of conversation clients. Exactly. And also, more importantly, is when the opportunity comes to re-engage those clients at a later stage, because the people you're recruiting may not necessarily be right for you right now.
Exactly.
Maybe a few months from now, you can re-engage. If that's just in your inbox somewhere with no notes and it's just lost, it's such a waste of time and
that's such valuable information for a startup, because you're hopefully not working with a recruitment agency. So the candidates that come into your environment are ones that are really genuinely interested in your business, because you've built your value proposition, and you've got your career page, and you've put a bit of effort into the planning stage and all that kind of stuff. So now candidates who are applying to your business are ones that are genuinely interested in your business. So that's really valuable information for you as a business. So even if they might not be ready for you today, but being able to add a note or a tag to this candidate, to say like, this is a really good finance candidate, and he or she might not be relevant for us today, but if we've reached this or at this point, they definitely will be. Mm-hmm. Then at least it will come up in the future, or we'll be able to search your database for that kind of information for that candidate. So absolutely, investing in ATS is super important. It doesn't have to be expensive either. There's some really great products.
I think it's one of the reasons why people avoid it, right? I'm being honest with you right now. I don't have one, right? And I am the inbox guy. But don't get me wrong, I have my inbox segmented, so there is some type of structure in there, so I know exactly they're separate folders, but it's definitely not what you have in mind. And I feel terrible because I'm thinking at the same time now, I obviously do that for my customers, and I have my CRM for everything else, but I don't have that as well. And I can use the excuse that we just started and we're a year old, but I definitely, so that's advice that I'm definitely going to take away from this conversation and make sure it happens here. What was the challenges that you faced when you was working with a startup CEO, co-founder versus the large multinationals that you worked in before with some of their leaders? Because they don't necessarily have the emotional attachment to the company that you really get as a co-founder and as a CEO of your own business. There's a very different attachment and level of energy and passion that comes with that really is it's good and bad as well.
I think find a way to help them focus, because as a business owner, you are naturally pulled in a number of different directions.
Yes.
Every single day. And, like I said earlier, no day ever looks the same. So, that time that you as a consultant or someone who's helping them with the growth aspect or the people aspect, as you're employed and engage with them for that particular point, help them in that moment focus on that particular task at hand, and really pulling out the information that you need to be more effective, and helping them think about things that they can give you to achieve what you need to achieve for them, because ultimately you are you're supporting them in something that they might not have the skill or whatever it is, it might be the case, to do. So helping them focus and giving them the right timeline and tools and things around them to really think about that. like I said, have really thick skin.
I think you made that point, but both of those are very, very important. It may sound quite generic, but it really isn't, because that's my biggest challenge, is staying focused. Because now, throughout my career, I only had to focus on one thing. I've spent my whole career in sales. Can you hear me? Okay. Hello?
Yeah, I lost you there for a second.
Oh, we're back. Okay. Yeah, as I was saying, in my career, before starting the company, I only have had to focus on one task, and that was, sales. Obviously, there was multiple tasks in that layer, but when you start your own business, you get pulled in a million different directions. And, on a daily basis, one of the things I found difficult in the beginning is I kept getting questions from all of the different employees and pulling me. Everyone thinks that their task is the most important, and it's the most critical, right? So you're trying to please everyone. You're trying to please everyone, and then you realize that because you're stretched, you're actually doing a bad job at everything, or a half good job at everything, instead of focusing on one task and making sure that that's delivered to a very high standard consistently. So there's something that I try and focus on now is what I'm doing right now getting me closer to achieving my goal. And if I'm not, then I stop doing it straight away and I go back to focus on the task at hand. And I've even write it down and have reminders around me to constantly make sure I'm doing that, because I can get carried away for 2 hours working on an app, which is nothing to do with what we need to achieve right now, but it's really exciting and in a great little flash project, but it's not the hard work or the most important work that needs to be done right now. As well, you skipped upon this earlier, but you did say don't work with recruitment agencies. So we have a topic. So why do you think startups and co-founders shouldn't work with recruitment agencies?
This could be a little bit controversial, I guess, because I also have really good friends who are a very, very successful executive search consultant and recruitment consultant. So I do find myself sometimes on the fence a little bit. But as an HR professional and someone who's worked in this profession for over 20 years, I feel that it is really super, super important for a small company to find somebody in-house that really understands their culture, their DNA, and it's really part of the fabric, right? Because you're having very important conversations with candidates from day one, and because you're looking to hire quite unique roles in some cases, like we talked about earlier, someone who can do a little bit of everything. You want someone who is vetting a candidate to really get your business and really get what you're looking for, so that they can screen candidates in and out, much more effectively, and it doesn't have to cost an arm and a leg, and recruitment fees are extremely high, unless you negotiate them to rock bottom, I guess. But they could be really, really expensive. And if you think about a startup and your budget, you have to consider that as well. Thinking about someone's salary, who sometimes, if you don't have investment, it comes from your own pocket, and then on top of that, having to pay for a fee for something that you probably could have, done quite easily yourself with the right tools and right planning. It will save you a huge amount of money.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and I think especially with a startup, the first few employees is really setting the foundation for the future success of your business, and only you can really. I think the CEO of and the co-founder of Workday, I think he said, if I'm not mistaken, said he recruited the first 500 people.
Yes,
himself.
Exactly. Yeah.
Interviewed the first 500 people because he understood that if he got that right, then and set the right, tone, the culture, etc., then that was going to be responsible for the future growth and success of that organization. You can't outsource that.
No, absolutely.
I just don't think I couldn't even imagine doing that. Even in a large organization that I worked in beforehand, I still would do it myself because so I agree with you but don't get me wrong, when it gets to a larger scale, when you're looking for maybe more specialized talent, then of course I think you may need to go out and look for external advice for that. But if you're hiring some salespeople or your first set of staff, then I think you should go out and do that yourself.
And there are some really, like I said, some very good recruiters out there and executive search consultants, and there is a space for everyone in the business, right? But I think if you're talking about a startup and a scale up, you think about your budget and you think about what you need to achieve, then there are more cost effective ways of hiring at the early stages of your business.
Yeah. Working with all of these CEOs and startups, what are some of the biggest sort of challenges that you see that they face early on?
Oh man, the biggest I have is actually making the decision at the end of the day to buy something, because you go through the process of you tick all the right boxes in terms of the skills and the planning and this and that and the other, and and then with all the interviews and everything, and then at the end of the day, when it actually comes to making the decision, it's like they will always find something that is not right to avoid having to make the decision. And it's frustrating because it realistically makes no sense, because you kind of you've put in all this effort and all this vetting and you've done all the right things in terms of the interviews, etc., but then making that decision,
because when you make that decision is when it becomes real.
Exactly.
That's why
it's like, what now?
Yeah, now it's real. Like you have
pay the salary next month.
Yeah, I think that's quite. I can relate to like when we first made our first few hires. It was a very big moment, because not only was it a big decision in terms of it's going to be our first few employees, but it's also the biggest financial decision you make.
Yeah,
as a business, big commitment. You're committing to tripling your overheads.
Exactly.
In one yes. So it's tough. It's really, really tough. But also, that is the number one thing that holds most startups back.
Exactly.
As you said. And people always say to me, if you can afford it, hire as fast as you can and as soon as you can. Obviously, go through your due diligence and go through it, but that's what's going to stop you. And it's also something, again, from other co-founders and CEOs that I've networked and met with over the last sort of 2 years. They said that they wish they hired more people, these people sooner. Constantly keeps coming up in my conversations. I wish I hired that person sooner and pulled the trigger, because it freed me up to do this, or freed me up to go and do that, which then took my business to the next level as well.
But then saying that, I worked with a wonderful startup who's based in London, in fact, and two young chaps, amazing idea they have, and they were hiring for their first developer, and I helped them through the process of that, and they had no problem. For them it was just like, we know we've got to do this, our investors are telling us this, and we know what we need to do. They made the decision, and a few days after they've hired this developer, I was checking in on them, and they're like, oh, this is amazing, great decision, he's already made his first bit live, and yada yada, all this thing is great. And it's like, and I get to go ahead and do some other things I didn't have time to do before because I've got him on board now. It's brilliant. And then you get stuff like that, and it works. It's great.
What about in terms of the cultural side? Because I know a lot, we use this word culture all the time, right? And everyone listening is a HR leader. What does that actually mean? But especially when you're talking about hiring your first employees and stuff, how do you assess cultural fit in your mind? What does that even mean?
What does that mean?
Do they like going out for drinks on a Friday night? Yeah, he's the right hire for us.
Well, we at a last company I worked with, we had a now just bear in mind the lingo here, because it was appropriate at the time, but they had a beer test, right? So would you have a beer test with this person? But we changed it eventually to coffee, or would you have a drink, or
I don't drink beer, so I would have failed that straight away.
Exactly, yeah. So this is the point. So I was like, you can't exactly go, would you have a beer test, right?
Yeah,
so
that's a bit strange.
Would you have like a coffee with them, or would you have a tea with them? Because then it turned into quite a big conversation about beverages, and I was like, that's not the point.
Yeah.
So but the point is, would you want to be working with that person every day, and also want to do some team building or some extra outside of work activities? Because if your business is one that does things like that, have team building weeks or evenings or whatever the case may be, then you want to bring people into the business who you'd want to not only work with daily, but you want to spend time with them as well. I'm not saying be friends with Facebook or with every single person you are, but someone who you want to socially interact with and who you have something in common with, and find a way to integrate that into your recruitment process. Because
That's
being
true.
able to assess that early on is vital. You'd want to be able to have someone in the business who's not the hiring manager for that particular role, or who's not responsible for that individual in terms of their job, but someone who's potentially in a completely different department. Get them involved in the interview process as a third or fourth opinion in terms of decision making at the end of the day, as a cultural screen. Have some questions specifically tailored to your company culture, and all candidates go through that at one point during their interview process. It doesn't have to be the end stage. It could be integrated at any point during the interview process. When there's especially if you need to fill in a gap between interviews, have an interview like that, a cultural interview, integrated into the process.
Where can our listeners learn more about the work that you're doing and get in contact with you, get in touch? Yeah.
So my website is stellar.hr, so STELLAR.hr, and on there you'll see a little bit more about me and my background, and the services that I offer to businesses. Also some information on my LinkedIn profile, so there's a little bit more there about the clients that I work with or that I have worked with in the past, and on there you can also learn a little bit more there in terms of testimonials and things like that as well. I've written a couple of blogs and been part of some really interesting articles and things like that, and that's also, you can find some of that on my LinkedIn profile as well.
You've been through this journey of all of these leaders, and many of the leaders that are listening to this show are going to be in a similar position at some point. So what's a parting piece of guidance that you would give to them?
Well, don't forget that you're the expert, right? You know what you're talking about. You've got the experience and you've done it. You've been there. Trust yourself. You're speaking to somebody who wants to learn more from you and who is looking for advice and looking for help. Don't sell that yourself short. You are there to provide a very exclusive service and support and knowledge.
Well, they're looking to you for advice, right? And for that to be a voice of reason for them. And many times,
don't be afraid. Yeah, if you're not sure, send me an email.
I'm sure you're probably gonna get many emails now, so don't blame me for that. Well, look, guys, thanks to everyone for listening. As always, as you know, guys, if you head over to hrleaders.com, you'll find all the show notes from the episode, links to Estelle's website, and all of the details will be there. LinkedIn profile, everything. So expect loads of messages, Estelle, from our audience. They're going to give you loads of messages. Apart from that, appreciate you taking the time out to join us on the show. And I wish you all the best until we next speak.
Yeah, great. Have a good day.